Hey, welcome to Beat Everyone. I'm Ben Flanagan with AL.com. It's LSU week, and that's still a big deal in college football, right? Has this rivalry lost a little juice? LSU's obviously figuring things out right now, but this team is under interim head coach Frank Wilson. They could make a lot of noise on Saturday with an upset in Tuscaloosa. There's nobody that I'd rather have breaking this down than our guest today. You know him from SEC Now and SEC This Morning, the Paul Feinbaum Show, College Football Live, SportsCenter. You see him everywhere. ESPN and SEC Network studio anchor, ESPN Radio and Sirius XM host, Peter Burns. Welcome, sir.
That was quite the mouthful there. I need you to be my agent going forward, Ben. So, yeah, I mean, again, I'm actually here in studio as we speak. We've got actually an Alabama-Vanderbilt soccer match that's going on as well. So, it's such an interesting time in all of college football, right, when you're talking about all of these rivalry games. And we haven't had kind of that much chaos, and this would be one of those games that would be chaotic, right? I mean, there's no reason to think that Alabama isn't one of the best teams in the country. We'll see that when the college football playoff rankings come out, and they've had so much success over the years traditionally, going back for the last probably decade or so against LSU. But then now you have this interim coach energy with Frank Wilson taking over the helm in a whole bye week to get ready for this matchup.
Yeah, Peter, I mean, it's exciting, and people here, I think, maybe overconfident about this game, but uncertain with the interim thing that you mentioned. But I want to get to
State overconfident, or is this different?
So I want to get to the Florida State thing in just a second, because you were quite the prognosticator when it came to how Alabama might react to that moment. But I want to ask you a little bit about what's happening behind the scenes, because I think it impacts Alabama and the rest of the SEC for years to come, right? You call it Cajun Game of Thrones. You've said that these decisions are usually made in some back room in Phil's Oyster Bar in Baton Rouge instead of at press conferences, where we've seen people like the governor of Louisiana, obviously, let's say, join the conversation. What the hell is happening down there? Like, will they ever hire another head coach at LSU?
I mean, they definitely will. The question is, will he have the same success that, obviously Ed Ogeron had, Les Miles had, and that Nick Saban, who built it, will have. And I think that's right now where the kind of the fog of war is happening right now, is that whenever it wasn't just Brian Kelly who got let go, it was the athletic director, Scott Woodward, as well, too. So LSU is in the midst of hiring a president for the university. And then the question is what are they going to do as far as the hire? I don't see a hire being made anytime until mid-December, because, Ben, more than likely you're going to want somebody that's deep into a college football playoff run, or at least an opportunity around that. So we've got another 6 weeks where this Cajun Game of Thrones will start to be played about who the power brokers are. And of course, that's ripe meat for Jimmy Sexton and Trace Armstrong and all of these agents to go out there and do kind of what they did when the Alabama job was open, when Nick decided to retire, which was, hey, we'll pitch this client out here and get a massive extension, i.e. Dan Lanning. Same thing with Mike Norvell over at Florida State. So there's no telling what direction this thing heads right now. And it's great. It's like the ultimate college football SEC soap opera.
Well, you do a segment called Future Headlines. Things move quickly on the carousel, right? But if pressed to guess today, right, whichever way the wind is currently blowing, one or two names, finish the future headline here. LSU hires blank.
Yeah, I mean, if I had to take a guess at it, I'd say John Summerall over from Tulane and right down the road, which would be odd because they could have gone right down the road and hired Billy Napier, but they decided they weren't going to do that. That was too small of a move. Well, guess what? It didn't work out going for the home run hire and Brian Kelly, and it didn't work out for Florida hiring Billy Napier as well, too. The reason why I say Summerall is that I just don't know where Lane Kiffin's head is at. All right, if you're Lane right now, you're a college football playoff contending team. You make a boatload of money. You're not having to – everybody's aligned in the direction they want to go right now, and Lane they trust. And so the question is, can you win a national championship in Oxford? I think, frankly, you can. I mean, if we could think that, Kurt Cignetti can do it in Bloomington, Indiana, and have a team that's that good, could Lane Kiffin do it at Ole Miss? And you're building your own legacy there. I mean, let's take LSU, for example. Let's say he happened to go to LSU. He'd have to win 2 national titles for LSU fans to look at them as one of their own, because they're always going to think Nick Saban for the first one they brought back in 2003, and they're always going to love Ed Ogeron for the ride in 2019, and especially because he was one of their own, like a Louisiana down to the accent. So, I think Lane's going to have a bunch of options. I'm sure he's going to get paid a boatload of money, but I'm not sure, especially with all the tumult that's going on right now in Baton Rouge, if that's the place that you want to go.
Summerall, great coach. I mean, it would be a good hire, but I mean, Kiffin, golly, can you imagine the content if he goes to Baton Rouge? I mean, he's going to be great content wherever he is, even
Yeah.
if he ends up staying in Oxford.
I mean, think about the Florida game coming up. Ole Miss and Florida are going to be playing a little bit in a couple of weeks. I mean, you imagine the amount of people that are going to be fired up to see what happens in that game one way or another. So, again, the problem is that we've talked about a lot on our show is there's only so many good coaches, and there's going to be a ton of open jobs right now because there's 4 in the SEC at this moment. There might be others as well. Combine that with Penn State and combine that with Oklahoma State and some other ones. This is going to be wild. It's like kind of the musical chairs, but there's too many chairs and not enough people going around and around to fill them out.
Peter, what did you consider the peak of the Alabama-LSU rivalry? Like, was it the game of the century? Was it the fact that they met in a national title game? Was it Joe Burrow walking into Bryant-Denny Stadium with about 100 other future NFL stars? Like, what was it about this rivalry that made the college football world stop and watch for the last 2 decades?
I mean, I got goosebumps just thinking about it. I don't go to a lot of LSU road games, but I was with my dad for 9-6, and it was one of the greatest games I'd ever seen. You probably hated it if you watched it on television, but if you were an Alabama or LSU fan, every moment seemed big. So I think it wasn't only that, but then also you go back and look at 2012, TJ Yeldon taking the screen pass and scoring. I mean, that gutted LSU. I'm a full believer at that point that was when Saban was at the height of the superpowers because you had the rematch in the Superdome. They end up winning that in 2011. It was disgusting for LSU. And then LSU had that game won. Yeldon takes the screen pass to the house. And for about a decade, it was all Bama. And I wondered if things would have flipped had Yeldon not had that touchdown pass. But, obviously the Burrow one, Jaden Daniels winning that game and the 2-point conversion in Tiger Stadium. I was right there on the field when it happened. It was chaotic. And that's why I think a lot of fans this week are saying, do they still have some juice left? Or is LSU, Alabama now Alabama, Georgia, as far as being the marquee matchup and the marquee rivalry and not just the SEC, but all of college football?
Well, and what to expect Saturday back in Bryant-Denny Stadium, usually a night game. Here we are again. Alabama's about a 9.5-point favorite at home right now. Kalen DeBoer, they got the tide rolling. 7 straight wins this season, 5 straight in conference. Does Alabama keep the winning streak going, or do you see new life in the eyes of LSU with Brian Kelly out of the picture? What kind of game do you expect?
Yeah, Ben, I think on some teams they're despondent when they lose their coach because they've been holding on for so long. If anything, I think it's like an accelerator for LSU that they don't have him, that Brian Kelly's no longer there. Almost like okay, that was just weird. Like, what are we doing now? And Frank Wilson is as Louisiana gets. And there's 50-plus guys on the state of Louisiana on that roster. So he's going to dive into these guys. He will have them fired up. The problem is that I don't think they're nearly as physical as Alabama, right? Like last year when Vanderbilt beat Alabama, that was because Vanderbilt was the more physical team. I don't think LSU can do that right now. So as much as you get excited to play that game, I ultimately think that Alabama just has too much to them. And also, Tim Keenan, this whole defensive front right now, Kane Womack's got to be just licking his chops because LSU's offensive line has not been good. They haven't been able to run the ball whatsoever. And now they've got a couple of injuries on that offensive line, specifically the left tackle, that could make for a field day. You combine that with not having Garrett Nussmeier being very mobile, it's a recipe for disaster. So I think LSU gives them a fight early. I just think Alabama just has got too many weapons.
Peter, just a couple more for you here. You were one of the few people out there who was really vocal about the embarrassing Florida State loss actually being good for Alabama. You said that the players needed the lesson that the Alabama helmet no longer strikes fear, right? That teams see it as an opportunity to play Alabama when they're wounded. And that Alabama had to realize that they're no longer the hunted. They got to become the hunter. Just a total mentality overhaul, right? So 7 wins later, they're ranked 4th in the country. They're in the driver's seat for a college football playoff berth. Does it feel good to be right about that one?
No, I mean, listen, you throw 1,000 things across the wall, sooner or later, the broken clock is right twice a day, right? And so, yeah, I mean, I just felt like there was almost a sense of, do you know who the heck we are? And you can't do that in college football in 2025 with the transfer portal and there being so much almost brand erosion versus, you're just supposed to win this game. And I stand by it. I think it was great. And even Kalen DeBoer, I asked him that, was this a crazy take? And he goes, no, we understood that we needed to change it. And I think I've seen a change in his aggressiveness, his enthusiasm, and how fired up he gets. And I think Bama fans needed it. I think the players needed it as well. But the one thing that Kalen, who has been great with all year or throughout his entire coaching career, is beating good ranked teams. But oddly enough, it was unranked teams that he hasn't been prepared for. And so this is an unranked LSU team that does not have the talent of an unranked team. They just had a bad season. So this is one more step to kind of earn that trust from Alabama fans, which has changed a lot since people were calling in asking about a $65 million buyout for Kalen.
Feels like a lifetime ago. Peter, last thing, you mentioned it. They've beaten a lot of good teams. They're ranked highly in the country at number 4 right now. They seem to be battle tested. Is Alabama a national title contender? Do you see them as a team that can beat Ohio State, Indiana, Texas A&M, maybe if they play in Atlanta? What do you think of them right now as a national contender?
Absolutely a national contender. And I look at the confidence that Joe Burrow and those guys had at LSU and that historical team in 2019. And I see shades of that with Ty Simpson, this wide receiver trio, and more importantly, Ryan Grubb, about, hey, if it's fourth down, we got Ty Simpson. It's going to happen. It's going to work. And there's a certain magic that I saw in 2019 LSU that I see offensively from Ty Simpson and those guys. So I kind of throw out the South Carolina game because I think at the end of it, it was just kind of catching your breath the last 0.2 miles of that marathon of ranked teams that they had. But this team is every bit as good as anybody in the country. And again, another feather in the cap to Greg Byrne, that if this thing continues to find just the right person, because that's a tough job replacing the greatest coach in the history of all time, Nick Saban. And so far, the early returns are pretty good for Kalen DeBoer this season.
Awesome stuff. Catch him on ESPN and SEC Network, plus ESPN Radio, Sirius XM. Peter Burns, we appreciate you spending some time with us.
Thanks, man. Appreciate it.
Hey, welcome back. Ben Flanagan here. Beat everyone. I'm joined now by our good pal, Matt Stahl from the AL.com Alabama football beat. Also with us, Matt Scalisi, our producer. Guys, Matt and Matt, welcome to you both. Alabama LSU week, for much of our lifetimes, has been one of the biggest games of the year. It's the one that has the most stakes. It's the one that the entire country is looking at to see how this impacts not just the SEC, but the national title picture. For so many years, it would determine potentially who would wind up in the playoff and the BCS championship. And we got some instant classics between these programs all throughout the Saban era, and with several coaches like Les Miles and Ed Orgeron, and then Brian Kelly, obviously. And now we'll see what happens with LSU's interim coach this weekend. But ESPN would send multiple shows sometimes, if not just College Game Day, or if not just SEC Nation. And there's it's just a ghost town this weekend. No ESPN, none of these national shows coming to town other than the broadcast that'll be doing the game at 6:30 in Tuscaloosa. Nobody wants a piece of this anymore. LSU obviously fired Brian Kelly. There's an interim coach. They're unranked. So my question to you guys, and each of you can make the argument if you want, has Alabama versus LSU lost its juice? Matt Stahl, you're our guest here. I'll start with you.
Yeah, I mean, maybe for 1 year, but no, as a rivalry, I don't think so. That's pretty, I feel like that's a little overly reactionary there. I mean, especially the ESPN, who cares if ESPN brings its barely watchable pregame shows to town for the Alabama LSU game? What are we doing? No, I mean,
it's an indicator though, Matt, that the larger college football world is focused on this game and this rivalry. It used to be automatic. Does it mean that it's the best game of the week or that it's the best rivalry in the SEC or the country? No, but it does mean that the larger conversation is centered on that game.
It's an indicator that LSU is just kind of bad this year. And that's why they fired their coach, right? They've not really been a real playoff contender for a few years. I don't know that's because, I mean, I've been in the stadiums for these games, and LSU fans cleared out last year when it became clear that not spying Jalen Milroe was not going to be a winning strategy for the defense.
The Alabama coaching box cleared out too. Remember?
Yeah. It was a blowout win, but it's not the fans still care about this game. It's not a rivalry just because one team's bad. Auburn's awful, and they've been bad, and it's still a rivalry game. Right? You still smoked cigars when Tennessee sucked for decades. It's not an indicator that the rivalry's lost its juice. I think it's just an indicator that one of the teams isn't so good at the moment.
But this rivalry, Matt Scalisi, pipe in here, obviously, because I think you might see it a different way. This rivalry seemed to be as hot as it was and as competitive as it was because the teams were both great, right? They were both ranked in the top 10. They both had a shot, again, at national title or SEC title contention. And it seems to me that Georgia has largely overtaken LSU as Alabama's third rival, at least when it comes to sort of like reaching for the top of the mountain. LSU is just kind of out of that conversation now. It was 2019 when Joe Burrow and LSU went undefeated and broke all those records and everything. I mean, that's part of a decade ago now. So I contend that it has lost a little bit, and we obviously know that these teams will not be playing annually anymore. Mississippi State will take LSU's place as that competitor on Alabama's annual schedule. So that's kind of a bummer too. But Matt Scalisi, what do you think? Lost juice, yes or no?
I think that there are a couple of reasons why we ever considered this a rivalry. And one of them, as you mentioned, is both teams being near the top of the rankings every year for a long stretch of time. The other part of it is that this is an extremely conditional rivalry. And I think all rivalries start out with some kind of weird thing happening and some kind of sort of very specific conditions in place. I mean, there are regional rivalries. Is there any universe in which Alabama and Auburn aren't rivals? Probably not. But I think we all know that rivalry is what it is because some really specific and weird things have happened along the way that have added to the feelings that the two sides have about that. Obviously, the Alabama LSU rivalry, I don't think any Alabama fan would have considered that game a rivalry prior to 2007. I think they would have considered it a conference game and it was important, but I'd say maybe still on the level of playing Arkansas or Ole Miss, things like that. I think the element of this sort of jilted first wife attitude that LSU brought to the game. There were a lot of hurt feelings being brought to this by LSU that created this rivalry as we know it now. And I think now that Nick Saban is retired, at least for now, LSU fans remain, as we record this, currently convinced that he is going to be their next head coach and that he's in Baton Rouge right now. And he's looking, he and Miss Terry are looking for houses. So
congratulations to them in advance, by the way.
The delusion is very, very strong over there right now. But look, I think this is winding down. I think this will, in the way that Alabama Clemson, I think for a brief period of time was something we could consider a rivalry, but it sort of faded. I think it went out as things moved on. I think Alabama LSU will fade into the background a bit. It will not carry the heat that the Iron Bowl or the third Saturday in October has. And it's because it was always conditional. And I don't think that it had enough juice outside of the Saban element of this to last as a rivalry for a long time. I could be wrong, but that's how I see it going right now. And I mean, look, it's not just that LSU is bad right now. Matt, we could be looking at a situation where LSU is about to enter a very dark period that could last for a while because there is some true chaos, the inmates running the asylum type stuff going on in Louisiana right now.
Yeah, the governor sort of seems like a moron at this point.
I would agree with that assessment.
Yeah, but not knowing all that much about the governor seems like a moron. But he
stick to sports.
I don't. Yeah, I don't necessarily agree that they're like for sure on the way to the tank here, right? Like that's that's an easier place to win at than Alabama. Like, I think that's a pretty fair assessment. Like proximity,
you say that
proximity to talent. Like, yeah, that's there's like two schools that recruit themselves, and it's Notre Dame and it's LSU. Weirdly enough, both jobs that Brian Kelly has done just like a okay at best job. But like I think it's easier to get talent to LSU than it is to Alabama. Like there's more just recruiting hotbed. I think I think the perception of it has changed and it'll last for a little while longer because like for every recruit in America right now, Alabama was like the preeminent empire as they were growing up. But like, let's say Alabama goes a few more years without a national championship and like the kids forget. So, like how old were current recruits in 2020? Like they remember it, but like not for all that much longer. So like if these two schools wind up sort of on the same playing field where recruits don't necessarily remember you as a dominant power in the sport, like is Alabama for sure in a better place than LSU is? Like all things being equal? Like if both schools have like a good coach, like I just don't necessarily see a scenario where LSU like just winds up at the bottom of the league. Like, and if the rivalry really is built on both teams being good, like LSU is a good hire away from being awesome again. Like it's a place you can win national championships. So, like I guess maybe that would depend on like LSU not screwing their hire up. So
well, this is for the reasons that you're saying, right, or like why people say this is one of the best jobs in the country, if not the best opening right now. Everybody is seeding LSU as number one because of all the talent, the infrastructure, the passion of the fan base. But I do think that to your point, to not specifically your point necessarily, but with the governor meddling so publicly, right, it's becoming less attractive right now, I think, for some candidates who are like, I don't want any part of that. If this guy's going to dictate every little thing, like, and the AD situation is frazzled at the moment. But if Ed Orgeron, if Les Miles, if those guys can come in and win national championships within 4 years of their tenures, then it probably looks good for other coaches who are at least similarly talented. But,
got to get the corruption pointed the right direction.
Exactly. But are you saying it's too big to fail, Matt? Scalise?
I don't know that it's too big to fail because you just watched Brian Kelly like not win a national championship. Now, Brian Kelly, like the teams were never like bad under Kelly, right?
He won the West his first season. He had the Heisman winning. He had the Heisman winning quarterback and Heisman winner during his second season, right?
Yeah.
Like, I mean, the margin for error is obviously slim.
I think the issue is this. This is a time in this sport where you can turn your program around extraordinarily fast if you are good at what you do. The problem is it's also very easy in the SEC to find yourself buried behind a bunch of other programs who have their stuff together better than you do very, very quickly, right? I mean, LSU, we're talking about this right now. I mean, they won the SEC West back when that was a thing to do in not very long ago. This year, they lose to Vanderbilt and like pretty definitively lose to Vanderbilt. I mean, they got thumped. They don't look like they're as good of a football program as Vanderbilt right now. I think to that point, with a quarter of the league currently deciding to change coaches, and all of those programs in varying degrees are sort of sleeping giants, I would say. This could go really well for you and you could turn it around fast, or you could suddenly be buried behind that's 3 more teams that you've had it better than probably, and now they're going to get a leg up on you. The hire does mean so much, and it is entirely possible that Florida and Auburn make better hires than LSU, and now all of a sudden that's two more programs that you're having to scratch and claw your way past if you want to make an impression in this league. I think it's probably less likely that Arkansas finds their way, higher in the pecking order than LSU, but it's just, it never stops, right? It's a moving target all the time. You are having to build a program while running full speed all the time in the way that this sport works right now. And, just to me right now, it looks like there's more friction and there's more obstacles that have to be overcome for LSU to do that than there is in Gainesville or at Auburn.
Well, look, I mean, when this game, again, was the college football game annually, and there were the games of the century in 2011 and 2019 and these instant classics in 12 and 14 and like all of these amazing games, during Saban's tenure, basically, it was still relatively one-sided. I mean, that was the case for the entire country, right? Like Alabama was just a better program overall. but I believe Saban went 12-5 against LSU. So I guess credit to LSU for getting 5 games off of them. And one of those games was also in a season where they played them again and lost in the national championship game, right? So Alabama had the last laugh. And there was some pretty funny banter about that from some former LSU players this week. I forget which podcast it was on, but former punter Brad Wing and some people were talking about how they had to play Alabama again. Nobody was excited about it. How are we going to act excited when we're about to get stomped by Alabama? And then you had an 8-game winning streak for Alabama during that period too at one point. So Alabama was winning most of those games. So I guess an alternative point of view here is like, was that rivalry as good a rivalry as we think it was?
It gained a lot of steam from the stretch between 2007 and 2012, which is a lot of games in that stretch of time. They were all very competitive every single year during that stretch. I think during that streak that you're talking about, Ben, I do think it already, I mean, look, people were still excited about it, but I think that it lost some steam because of some of the one-sided games during that period of time. 2013 was a blowout. 2015 was a blowout. 2016 was a shutout, even though it was relatively close. But LSU never put a single point on the board. 17 and 18 were very one-sided in Alabama's favor. Obviously, 2019 was a great. People call that an all-timer SEC football game, and it was 2 great teams that could have won the national championship. After that, you have the Brian Kelly win in 22, and otherwise, it's been absolute ass kickings by Alabama to LSU in every single one of those. So, I mean, to me, LSU being competitive in this series over the last 10 years is more of an aberration than the trend.
Yeah, well, people can say what they want about Jalen Milroe, right? And I know that they all have opinions on him, even Alabama fans, but that dude owned LSU. His 2 seasons that he played them, incredibly impressive. But, Stahl, I'm curious about, what your point of view, because, Matt and I, we're a little older than you. And so like we have slightly differing perspectives here, but I'm just curious to you, like, what is peak Alabama LSU? Like when somebody just says the names of those 2 teams, when that rivalry is first mentioned, what is the image, what is the game, the moment that comes to mind?
I mean, at this point, it's probably the 2019 game, right? And it's probably just because I was watching that 2019 LSU team so much, and that was kind of like the big question. Was like, is this really the best college football team of all time? Like, we're about to find out against Alabama. I mean, I watched both games the year they played twice, but I was real young at that point. But yeah, I think the big one that comes to mind is the Burrow year. I also wonder, like, how different is this discussion right now if Jaden Daniels doesn't get hurt in 2023? Because like LSU was really hanging around in that game right up until like he got concussed. So
Dallas Turner knocked him out of the game.
That's right.
Yeah.
And then
Jalen Milroe was, to his credit, was as good as Jaden Daniels was in that game.
Yes.
That was arguably his best game ever.
And look, I sound like I'm being minimal because we're talking about 2 NFL starting quarterbacks, but that is, I think, the big separation here between these 2 programs, because they both recruited at a really high level, and they've had relatively very good coaching staffs. You could call them at least comparable. I think Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow are really the only 2 very good quarterbacks that LSU has had during this entire during the Alabama's Saban era. I'm not sure I could point to another LSU quarterback that I would say was an elite quarterback playing for LSU in this series.
Justin Jefferson. What was his name? Oh gosh, I got his name wrong, I think. But they had Zach Mettenberger was a quarterback then. Who else? Max Johnson.
Some very undistinguished and forgettable names. There was
remembering some guys, all-star Ryan Perrilloux.
Golly, that's a pull right there.
Who was the 2011 quarterback? Was it Lee? Am I remembering that right?
Jarrett Lee. Was he the quarterback at that point?
I know he did play some quarterback. I don't know if he was the full-time starter.
Yeah, Matt Flynn was in there somewhere.
I think in a lot of these games, if you go back and look, great defenses on both sides. LSU obviously has produced a ton of offensive
Jordan
line.
Jefferson. That's
Jordan
who.
Jefferson.
Yeah.
They've produced a ton of offensive line talent that went to the NFL, tons of receivers. And the big difference has been Alabama has had guys like Jalen Hurts, Tua Tagovailoa, Bryce Young, Mac Jones obviously whooped up on him pretty good. And Jalen Milroe as well, who seemed sort of unstoppable for LSU. But even before that, right, if you think about whom, look, this is sort of the nature of the position. AJ McCarron makes the game-winning play against LSU in the 2012 season. Blake Sims, puts together this crazy drive in 2014 to win that game. It's always the Alabama quarterback coming up with the big moment when they need to in that series, and LSU just wasn't ever able, outside of Joe Burrow in 2019. I can't really think of a time where an LSU quarterback was the guy who kind of came down and made the big game winning moment.
That bodes well for Alabama this year, doesn't it? I mean, between Ty Simpson and Garrett Nussmeier obviously not 100%. Talented guy. He's probably going to play in the NFL, whether he's a starter or a backup, has the tools. But Matt Stahl, I mean, just looking at the 2025 version of this, we all know Brian Kelly's fired. They're playing with an interim coach. We know Garrett Nussmeier is not totally healthy. Like, how do you see this playing out?
Yeah, it's interesting because you'll have a different offensive coordinator in there too. They got rid of Joe Sloan, who seemed to be doing a just terrible job. That's a frustrating thing, I think, for LSU fans about the Kelly era is you're going to wind up having two potential starting NFL quarterbacks and just have F all for it. It's nothing. Yeah, but
Stahl, nobody could ever accuse you of waffling on anything. I don't think you're very emphatic. You're very emphatic with your opinions, and I'm impressed by that.
Look, you gotta be 10 toes down on some of this stuff. But I mean, Nussmeier, I think, could still be really, really good if they start doing the right things, and also if he's healthy. Yeah. Which, coming off a bye week for LSU, that's no small thing. So, I am very intrigued by what the LSU offense will look like in this game. But, I mean, look, Alex Atkins' last offensive coordinator job was the Florida State team that won one FBS game.
Not promising. Not a promising resume.
That didn't go so great. Whose fault the Florida State situation was is up for debate. But, I mean, if it looks a lot different, I'm intrigued, I think, by this matchup. But, yes, entering the game based on, their 2025 form, you take Ty Simpson all day. He's been just really, really excellent.
Matt Scalisi, I'm curious your answer. What is the moment, game, whatever, of the Alabama LSU rivalry that you consider dying at this moment? What sticks out to you?
I actually wanted to pose this in a different way to you, Ben, because I'm since we're the resident old guys here. Do you have a favorite pre-Saban Alabama LSU game?
Oh my God. You got to reach way back, don't you? It's got to be there. Wasn't there? I'm such a beginner here, but I want to say there was a Francione year where they beat LSU 31-0. I'm pretty sure
it was in 2002.
Yep.
And it was 31-0 in Baton Rouge. And Nick Saban actually berated Francione on the field after the game for running the score up.
Well, do you remember Brian Kelly? Was it last year? Was it Brian Kelly last year who was complaining to the ref about Alabama blitzing when they were
very similar moment.
Now, he kept his starters in the whole game. They're down 600 points in the fourth quarter, and he still got the whole starting team. So Kane Womack was, dial it up. Come on.
I think it's that Francione win, just because that's probably the freshest and the most dominant pre-Saban win in my lifetime. But I mean, if we're talking real deal Alabama LSU, it's got to be game of the century. Honestly, no matter what happened in the Sugar Bowl and the BCS championship after that, the hype for that game, the regular season game in 2011, was as palpable and real for anything I've ever seen in my life. It came close again in 2019 in the Burrow game. I mean, obviously Trump comes to town. Those shows that we mentioned are there. I mean, like, you can't move hardly. There's nowhere to park. There's like, you gotta, like, your whole day is just like shot completely if you're going to the game. But 2011, the game this, I've never seen anything like that since. Like, no other game for any sport, honestly, has had the excitement built around it the way that one did. I was there. I personally, it was a 9-6 game. I know that there were no touchdowns scored. Every inch or yard was hard to come by, but I found that game to be really entertaining. Neither team backed down. Neither team broke until overtime, and I thought it was just an awesome slugfest. And a lot of Alabama fans, I remember them, their heads were hanging so low at the moment, and they just didn't anticipate the BCS chaos that was to come shortly after that would put them back in the mix. And it was just really a satisfying season to watch. I know not for LSU fans, but Matt Scalisi, for me, that's probably number one. And I agree with you, Stahl. 2019 is right there.
My personal, my all-time favorite game in this series is the 2014 game that I mentioned earlier, the Blake Sims getting them to overtime out of an impossible situation where Alabama fumbled near its own end zone.
They should have lost the game.
Yeah, very, very bad situation to be in. Somehow end up getting to overtime and then winning that game. It was Lane Kiffin at kind of his most fun, and I think it was also just I'm always partial to games that I think one side looks completely dead, like they have no shot, and somehow they pull it out. It's my favorite thing to see, and it's a very memorable game. It gets overlooked because it's in a season where Alabama didn't win a national championship, but I think it's a great game. But pre-Saban, Ben, this was one that I actually went to in person. I guess I would have been in like 8th or 9th grade when this game happened. It was in Tuscaloosa, 1998. And so at the time, I'm looking it up. This was an LSU team that had Kevin Falk at running back, who by the way ran for 200 yards plus in this game. The rest of the situation, I couldn't tell you any of these other players for LSU. Alabama had Sean Alexander, who was often running in this game. Andrew Zhao played quarterback. And this game, it was an extremely back and forth tight game. Alabama was down 16-7 in the fourth quarter. They rally back and score 15 points in the fourth quarter and win the game with an interception at the very, very end as LSU is driving to potentially win the game. One of the earliest great games that I can remember, because you look, when you grow up and you're going to a lot of Alabama games in the 90s, very hit and miss as to what you're going to see quality wise. But 1998, a team I couldn't tell you many other games from that season, but I was at that one, and I remember thinking this is very cool. This is one of those early games that kind of made me fall in love with college football.
Really had to earn it to get to a game back then too. You had to take your horse-drawn carriage, find a place where your horse could get some water.
The good news, Matt, the good news was there was ample parking because most of Tuscaloosa was just a big open field back then. And
I remember that when we went to the saloon afterwards.
Yeah.
And the speakeasies.
I was drinking a
sarsaparilla.
Drinking a bottle with 3 X's on it. I said I'd like just an X light, and they're like, his belly's yelly.
Matt went back to the last century. He went back to the previous century for the game. God, that hurts.
That may have been the game that got Jerry DiNardo fired from LSU and set off really a very long string of events that led us to where we are today.
Man, we were at some classics. Matt, I know that you were there, and I saw you there in 2012 for the TJ Yeldon screen pass. You mentioned AJ McCarron earlier. I was there for 2005 when it was Alabama was undefeated going into the game, Shula's best season, and Jamarcus Russell found Dwayne Bowe in overtime to beat Alabama. I was there in 2019, there in 2014. I mean, like there's been so many insane, awesome games between these two. So I'm,
even 2007, a bad Alabama team. 2007 was and an LSU team that won the national championship. It was a great game. It was very back and forth. Alabama had a fourth quarter lead in that game after a punt return touchdown.
Javier Arenas, electrified the crowd.
Great game.
Yep, couldn't get it done. Well, look, man, like this rivalry, this series has so much rich history that I'm not ready to call it dead yet. I'm hoping that we get more. I am a little saddened by the fact that they're not going to play every season. It was one that I always look forward to. And Matt Stahl, you joked about it with us earlier that like Alabama's running from the smoke by replacing them with Mississippi, but they didn't, right? Like during the Saban era, they had to do it every single year, and they did it. And sometimes it ruined their season, but more often than not, it meant that they just had to get through them to be the best.
Listen,
you got to beat the best.
I don't think anybody no joke. I don't think anybody wants to play Mississippi State right now. I think there's a lot of schools that would rather take their chances against LSU than Mississippi State at this exact moment. But who knows where that program is headed. I just don't want to totally run down Mississippi State in the week that they get a huge win over Arkansas. Let's give the Bulldogs some props here.
Hey, Starkville's underrated. We can call Starkville.
Well, let's not go that far.
Maybe the coaching carousel will take their head coach away.
There's worse places in the SEC than Starkville, Mississippi.
Well,
let's just let that hang out there. We're not gonna detail it.
Stahl, you've been so about it this podcast. Name them.
Columbia, Missouri.
Worse than Starkville.
Gainesville, Florida. Yeah, those two are like. Those two places are terrible.
All right, we'll let that be your last victim to have claimed here on this episode. But more to come from Matt Stahl, I'm sure, in the future. Matt Stahl, thank you. You got to go read all of his coverage, his and Nick Kelly's coverage of Alabama football over at AL.com. We appreciate you. Appreciate you, Matt Scalisi, Beat Everyone producer. Thanks to Peter Burns from ESPN for joining us earlier, talking some Alabama LSU. Go back and check that out if you haven't. Thanks, everybody else. Find us wherever you get your podcasts. We'll see you next time. Enjoy the game. Stay safe out there.